get to do a video because I was on vacation all last week, as you know. But even though we're into basically the fourth week of the MLB season, things haven't changed. The Tampa Bay Rays are really the cream of the crop when it comes to Major League Baseball. And when you look at their home record, they're still undefeated. They could pitch, they could hit. Randy Arozarena with a walk-off home run yesterday. This team just keeps churning along, and especially when you look at teams that really start out that hot, a lot of times they have sort of a down period and they have a downswing. But for them to start 18-3, even after those couple of losses in Toronto, to sort of still not come back down to earth is pretty impressive. And when you look at the American League East, I mean, it's shaping up to be the best division in baseball. I think all four teams are 500 and above. So that's a tough division. They're definitely going to beat up on each other, as the season wears on. But yeah, definitely look out for the American League East. And more importantly, and I guess really the first team I wanted to talk about positively in terms of surprises, the Baltimore Orioles. I think it's hard because the American League East has a lot of sort of high-profile teams. You look at what the Rays are doing. The Yankees are always going to be a tough out. Toronto, a lot of people have been waiting for them. Even the Red Sox in sort of a down year, although they've been 500. They're the Boston Red Sox. They're going to get a lot of noise. I think Baltimore has slowly but surely, I mean, you look at it, they're 13-7. They've been playing good baseball, and they're one of those teams where, especially at the trade deadline, if they have the desire to make some moves and get some pitching, this team could be dangerous in the playoffs because they can hit the ball. I mean, this is a hitting team. And the past few days against Detroit, they've gotten good pitching. And if Baltimore gets good pitching, the sky's the limit for this team. They could very well be competitive in the American League East. Now, it's still early. We're in the early part of the season. I think only about an eighth of the season has been completed, so a lot of baseball left to play. But so far, so good for the Orioles, especially in a competitive American League East, to be second coming into the day, ahead of the Yankees, ahead of the Blue Jays, even if, by slim margins. I think that's something impressive, and this is definitely a team to watch out for. Another team that's been hitting the baseball to watch out for, and no, we're not going to talk about the Brewers, because I think sort of, you expected them and the Cardinals to be at the top. I don't think anybody expected the Brewers and the Pirates to be at the top, though. And let me tell you, we've lost some money betting against the Pirates this year. Now, the question's going to be whether this is just an early season mirage. Are they going to fade into obscurity and become sort of the team that was expected? But I'll say early in the year, same thing with the Orioles. This is a team that could hit the baseball. And when you could hit the baseball, especially in this league, you could run. They have fast guys. They could steal bases. Andrew McCutchen has had some big hits from them. That's right, the ghost of Andrew McCutchen. He's back in he's back in black and gold and looking good doing it. Another Pirates team that sort of, if they could keep this up and keep competitive, especially the way the Cardinals have sputtered out of the gate, and we'll get to them, really going to be interesting to see whether they could hang with Milwaukee and whether they could survive in that division, because it seems like sort of the same thing that's happened in the American League is happened in the NL, where the NL East has been sort of probably the best division in the National League, with this, the Central, obviously the Brewers and Pirates, but then not really much coming out west. So Pirates could hang in there. I like what they're doing. I think we're going to be looking to play them a lot more, although, of course, I bet on Cincinnati today, but definitely going to be looking at them in the future. And then the last team, and, they're close to 500, but it's a prize division leader after, 22, 23 games. Arizona Diamondbacks, getting enough hitting. Zach Gallen's finding himself. They've got some good pitching at the top of the rotation. And more importantly, when you look at, a team like the Diamondbacks, a small market team that goes and is willing to eat $34 million in Madison Bumgarner's contract, who was not performing. He was a, human batting practice machine. He was dreadful. The fact that a team like that is willing to part ways with somebody who, is making that type of money, that's a big statement of intent for that team. And I guess really that's sort of the question when it comes to these early season surprise teams is whether they're going to go and have the desire at the trade deadline to make moves that could position them for a postseason run, because there's really sort of three seasons in Major League Baseball. You have pre All-Star break, and you have your surprise teams that sort of shock the world and are doing good. Then you have the time period after the All-Star break, where I think the season really starts to begin. Now it's contender pretender time. A lot of these teams after the All-Star break, if you're a pretender, you start to fade. Guys get injured. The wear of the baseball season gets in on you. And then finally you have the trade deadline, or after the trade deadline, which is really where the teams that are serious about making runs a lot of times get guys that sort of, propel them to the next level. We see it all the time. So the question for these early season surprises will be, at the trade deadline, are they going to be aggressive enough to go out and really, make an effort to try and take it to the next level and really be competitive? So that's sort of the good side of the ledger when it comes to Major League Baseball. Now we get to the bad side of the ledger, the teams that have been surprising in a bad way. And I guess we'll start with sort of the low-hanging fruit. Kansas City Royals and Oakland A's. It's shocking because I'm pretty sure I bet the Royals almost every time they've won. I think I bet them 3 times and they won every time. And they have 4 wins on the year. So we've had a good read on this, shitty, garbage Royals team. But the A's are a minor league ball club. They're terrible. Basically, you bet against them 162 games, you're going to win probably over 100 times. I mean, they got awful. The Royals, another team where they just don't hit. They're pitching, they get good starts and lose close games, and then they get shelled, and, the only team they could beat is the Angels. And we're going to have a separate video, by the way, just for the Angels, because there's going to be a mega rant coming. So stay tuned for that. But those have been 2 of sort of the most disappointing, pathetic, loser teams. The Oakland A's, they're going to be the Las Vegas A's soon. You can't blame them. They're drawing 5,000 people. They've torn the team to its bare bones. I mean, it's just not working. You feel bad for the city of Oakland, of course. They basically lost all of their team, a lot of them to Vegas, but yeah, they're dreadful. Now to, I guess, kind of get into the teams that really are sort of legitimate disappointment. Look no further than the St. Louis Cardinals. Again, early in the season, they're 8-13. Plenty of time to turn it around. They may still be, in the thick of things when all's said and done. Really disappointing. Miles Michaelis lost again last night. Well, I guess he didn't take the loss, but the Cardinals lost one of his starts. He hasn't pitched well. The Cardinals are just one of those teams where they never seem to win consistently. I don't know what it is. They're not hitting how you would expect them to hit. They're blowing some leads in inopportune times. They're getting bad starts. They're just sort of a head-scratching team, especially when you think of it. They've been the Yankees of the National League for so long. They're one of those teams you sort of just expect to find ways to win, and it seems like more often than not, they're finding sort of weird ways to lose games, and they're not playing good baseball. They're not hitting well enough. They're not hitting with runners in scoring position sometimes. It just seems like every night there's a new reason why they've lost the game. And again, they lose another close game, this one in Seattle, albeit against Luis Castillo. But you score 4 runs in a game like that, but you give up 5 and lose. And that's sort of been the MO with the Cardinals. Seems like almost every time we bet them, it's a situation where if they're facing a bad pitcher, they score 7 runs and give up 9. Or if they're facing an ace, they'll get 3 runs against them but give up 4. It's just find ways to lose. And I guess the last disappointing team, and, there's a few you could add. I mean, the Phillies haven't been great to start the year, but I think really sort of the last sort of surprise. Los Angeles Dodgers, that's a bit surprising to see how they've struggled, especially against some teams that, haven't been great. I think you looked at the Mets offense coming into the Dodgers series last week, and you didn't really know what the Mets were going to look like. Max Scherzer gets thrown out of the game early, and we'll talk a little bit about Max Scherzer coming up. But Dodgers are a team that, again, just doesn't necessarily seem to be clicking, having some offensive problems. We know they lost some people in the offseason, but yeah, they had a tough series with the Diamondbacks to start the year, and it seems like every series for them has been sort of tougher than you would expect. Urias just lost to start. They were getting perfect game by Drew Smyly at home. Now, mind you, we were on the right side of that pick, but I didn't think Drew Smyly would be throwing a perfect game anytime soon. So that was a bit surprising. And yeah, they've had a few surprising series against some down teams where they've sort of, they lose the series at home to the Mets. Then they're sort of, they're in a battle with Chicago in this latest series. So they've been a bit disappointing thus far. Again, there's plenty of time to rebound. It's an early MLB season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But, you got to start somewhere, and these games count. And especially, some of these good teams like Houston, like the Dodgers, when you look at it, you have teams like the Braves who seem to win every road game. Now, their home record's been, not the best, but they seem to win every game on the road. You look at the Mets; they're right behind the Braves. So you look at the Brewers are 15-6. So you look at sort of the Dodgers, and you could say, oh well, it's early and there's plenty of time. But you start to go down 5-6 games in the loss column, and these are games that are going to have to be made back later in the year. And the question is sort of, how long is it going to take for these teams to really go and sort of hit their stride? Same in the American League, the Houston Astros, sort of the American League favorite. They're off to a 500 start. And you say, okay, well, no big deal. There's plenty of season left. But you look at teams like the Rays who have gone. They're 18-3. Houston, they're 10-11. You look at their games back in the loss column already. And those are games that are going to need to be made up. And the question is, if Tampa goes, let's say 25-6, and Houston is, I don't know, 17-17 or whatever, you still, you have a couple bad weeks, and the deficit continues to mount. The question is, how far do you go before it gets harder and harder to come back? So these games do matter, even though it's a long season. These are big games early on. And how many times do you sort of look at, we've done it all the time. There was a year where the Yankees got off to a great start and went 500 the rest of the year. And you look at it, and it's, well, those games sort of at the beginning of the season were the difference between playoffs and not. And sometimes these games early in the season could be the difference between winning a division and losing a division, or, a game 7 in Houston or a game 7 in Tampa. So really important games to start off the year. I guess, with respect to this recap, also want to touch base with sort of the, a couple of the wackier sort of things that happened. The Drew Smyly perfect game, that was crazy. We were on the right side of that game, but did not expect Drew Smyly to, to pitch that well. And he's been good at home, and he's been good at home this season. Maybe the Cubs are off to a bit of a surprise start. But the way that ended with the infield collision was just crazy. So yeah, that was an interesting sort of thing that happened while I was away. And then a game I actually saw more of, and that was very angry about. As you know, I'm a Mets fan. Max Scherzer, he's really the sort of, I'm trying to think of another guy who got a 10-game suspension since the rule change for the sticky stuff. Now, he claimed it was rosin. I'm not sure. The umpire said it was the stickiest he's ever been, stickiest hand they've ever seen or whatever. But that's a huge loss for the Mets, who are already having rotation problems and are trying to keep pace with the Braves, who've been playing good baseball. And, the Marlins have been surprising. And, the Phillies are, on the road to getting healthier. And, there's a lot of teams in the National League. So that's a big loss for the Mets to have Scherzer go down for as long as, as long as he's going to be down for maybe the next two starts. Verlander hurt, their rotation sort of a mess. And yeah, it was just a very weird situation because if you didn't watch the game, they actually checked him once. He had to go into the locker room to, I guess, wash his hand, or there was something in the glove and he had to change gloves. And then they checked him the next inning and he was, I guess they still had a problem and he got ejected from the game. So it was really rare thing, something you don't see all that often in baseball really anymore. Since the rules changed, for the most part, people have been, sort of fine. But yeah, I mean, in this case, Scherzer gets dinged. It was a big loss for the Mets. So that, And look, I mean, especially too, and this is sort of a point, maybe even to dovetail with what's happening in the NFL, where more players have been suspended due to, due to betting. And when we get into our NFL videos, I think Big Bucks and I will discuss that more. But just to sort of tie it to baseball, I mean, you look at it, sort of some of the early game injuries that impact the starting pitchers. And when you have situations like that where, the Mets ended up winning the game anyway, but if you like the matchup of Scherzer against Syndergaard, and, we're rolling with the Mets, I mean, you couldn't feel too confident when 4 innings in the game, Max Scherzer gets ejected. And we talk about it all the time, sort of, with playoffs and how these, ejections sort of impact the game. I know in the NBA they're having a lot of that, where I know Doc Rivers talked about the fact that, you care so much about keeping these players, on the court, and you care about load management, so these people are available in the regular season. And then it's the postseason and you're letting people get hurt, and you're tossing people from the game in the biggest time of the year. I think betting, what it really does is it makes sort of every game important. So, a game in April between Max Scherzer and Noah Syndergaard, a big deal. But if you have money on the game and Scherzer gets ejected in 4 innings, I mean, that significantly impacts your ability to win a bet. So, there's always risk involved. It's just been it's been a fun start to the MLB. I'm definitely enjoying it, and the picks have been going well. But yeah, so that's the recap, and I guess there's no better way to end a recap video than with this guy. That's right, it's another Schlager Sunday. Really, could call it a double Schlager Sunday, because after all, we've had 2 winning weeks in a row. Albeit this last week, let's be honest, we got lucky to get out of vacation week with a win. So, to top it off, hope all of you out there are enjoying winning weeks with whatever sports you're betting. My goal is to try and keep giving you winning MLB weeks for as long as possible. So, salute to all of you out there. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Let's go Mets. Hope you guys do betting. And certainly, if you haven't, like our videos, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're trying to give out picks more frequently. And other than that, DJet Nation, make that motherfucking money. Signing off.